Hey, my name is Daniel. I'm 32. I never believed in fate until the night I looked up from my father's hospital bed and realized the black nurse adjusting his IV was the woman who once held me together when I was 17. The one who disappeared without saying goodbye. The fluorescent lights hummed. Disinfectant mixed with her jasmine hand cream. She looked at me and whispered, "You don't remember me, do you?" And I said the only thing I could. How could I forget you? That's when I found out she was married to my father's surgeon, and every rule holding our lives together started to quietly come undone. If you're watching this right now, tell me where you're from in the comments, because I still don't know if what we did was wrong. I never believed in fate until the night my phone rang at 2:47 a.m. I was sitting in my apartment, half asleep over a logo design that was due the next morning, when an unknown number lit up my screen. The voice on the other end was efficient, almost apologetic. My father had suffered a heart attack. He was being transferred to St. Catherine's, a private hospital 2 hours north that I'd only heard about in the context of rich people and tax write-offs. I threw clothes in a bag. I didn't think. I just drove. The smell hit me first when I walked through those glass doors. Disinfectant mixed with something floral. Expensive hand soap, maybe. The lobby had marble floors that made my sneakers squeak, and leather chairs that looked like they cost more than my rent. Families sat in clusters, dressed in the kind of casual that comes from old money. I felt like I'd walked onto a movie set. The nurse's station glowed under soft lighting. A man in a white coat appeared. Tall, black, mid-50s, with the kind of presence that made you stand straighter without meaning to. "Daniel Reed?" His smile was warm but measured. "I'm Dr. Leonard Carter. Your father is stable. We performed an emergency bypass about 4 hours ago." He walked me through the procedure with careful patience, emphasizing words like fortunate and excellent facility in a way that made me wonder if he thought I couldn't afford to be there. Maybe I couldn't. I didn't ask about the bill. Behind him, I caught a glimpse of a nurse in navy scrubs, bent over a chart at the desk. Her voice drifted toward me, low, steady, saying something about medication schedules. I was too overwhelmed to pay attention. My father looked small in that bed. Tubes and wires connected him to machines that beeped in steady rhythm. I sat in the reclining chair beside him, holding a styrofoam cup of terrible coffee, telling myself I'd stay just a couple of days. I didn't know that the woman who'd once pulled me back from the edge of giving up was walking these same halls. The next morning, fluorescent lights woke me before the nurse did. My back screamed from the chair. A young woman, maybe 29, chatty, with her phone always in her scrubs pocket, came in to take vitals. "You actually stayed all night?" She smiled at me like I'd done something remarkable. "I'm Jasmine. Most families, they don't do that anymore." I learned the rhythm fast. Billing called about insurance. I texted my neighbor Tyler to water my plants. I sent an email to a client explaining I'd need another week. The hospital became its own small world. Cafeteria coffee that was somehow worse than the floor coffee. The gift shop that closed at 7. The specific squeak of rubber soles on polished floors. Nurses rotated through. I started recognizing faces, voices, the particular way each one said my father's name. Then she walked in to adjust his IV. I noticed her hands first. Careful hands. The scent of jasmine hand cream mixed with the ever-present disinfectant. She spoke to my father in a voice that was gentle without being condescending, explaining what she was doing even though he was half asleep. Something pulled at the back of my mind. A sense of familiarity I couldn't place. She glanced at me on her way out, just a second of eye contact, and I felt something, like trying to remember a dream. That evening I called my mother. She lived 3 states away now, hadn't spoken to my father in over a decade. The divorce had been bitter in that quiet, permanent way. "How much is this costing?" she asked, instead of asking how he was doing. "I don't know yet. That place is for millionaires, Daniel. He can't afford that." "He's already there, Mom." She was silent for a moment. Then, "Is he being taken care of? Are the nurses good?" Yeah. I stood at the window that night, watching the nurse with the careful hands at the station down the hall. The way she moved was so familiar it made my chest ache. It was late, past midnight. The monitor beeped its steady rhythm. My father slept. I scrolled through my phone, not really looking at anything. She came in alone this time. Checked the IV, made notes on her tablet. I could see her name badge now. Monique Carter, RN. Carter. Like Dr. Carter. "You've been here every night," she said softly, not looking up from her charting. "He's my dad. Still. Most people. They come during the day. Go home at night. I don't mind the chair." She smiled at that. A real smile. Small and sad. Then she looked at me. Really looked at me. And her expression shifted. Something flickered behind her eyes. Recognition? Uncertainty? Maybe fear. "You don't remember me, do you?" The question landed like a physical thing. I stared at her. 17 years old. A brace on my leg. A small living room that smelled like antiseptic and my mother's cigarettes. A woman's voice talking me through the worst pain I'd ever felt, night after night after night. "How could I forget you?" I whispered. The words came out before I could stop them, before I could think about what they meant or how they sounded. She looked down at her hands. At the wedding ring that caught the fluorescent light. "Monique," I said. Not a question. "I go by my married name now. Monique Carter." She glanced toward the door, then back at me. Dr. Carter is my husband." The floor tilted. My father's surgeon. The man who'd walked me through the procedure with careful, measured words. The man whose hands held my father's life. "How long have you been here?" I asked. "At St. Catherine's? Almost 12 years?" She busied herself with the IV line again, even though it didn't need adjusting. "Life just moved on. You know how it is?" But I didn't know. Because one day she'd been there. Patient, steady, the only person who made me feel like I wasn't broken beyond repair. And the next morning she was gone. No explanation. No goodbye. Just gone. She left the room before I could ask her why. I sat in that chair, staring at the ceiling, remembering. The car accident. My leg shattered in 3 places. Surgery, physical therapy, months of being trapped in my own body while my mother worked double shifts and pretended everything was fine. Monique had been hired as my home care nurse. She was younger then, maybe 30, with tired eyes and gentle hands, and a way of talking that made pain feel less permanent. I'd gotten attached. Too attached, probably. She'd stayed late some nights, talking to me about music and art and everything that wasn't the pain. She'd never made me feel weak or broken or like a burden. And then she'd disappeared. I pulled out my phone and Googled Dr. Leonard Carter St. Catherine's. The first result showed a professional photo. Him in a tuxedo at some charity gala, her on his arm in a black dress that probably cost more than my car. They looked perfect. Polished. Untouchable. I put my phone down and stared at my father's sleeping face, wondering why some people walked back into your life just when you thought you'd finally learned how to live without them. Morning came with shift change. Monique was there with another nurse, doing a thorough assessment. She was different in daylight, more professional, more distant. When the other nurse left to grab something, Monique asked me to step into the hallway. "Listen," she said quietly, glancing towards the nurse's station. "About last night, it's probably better if we don't mention our history. To anyone. Especially not to Leonard." "Why?" "Because your dad needs straightforward care and complications." She shook her head. "It just makes things harder. For everyone." I wanted to argue, wanted to ask what complications she meant. But her face was so carefully composed, so practiced, that I just nodded. That afternoon, I called Tyler. He made crude jokes about hot nurses for about 30 seconds before settling into actual concern. "You okay, man? You sound weird." "I'm fine. Your dad's gonna pull through. Carter's supposed to be the best." "Yeah, he is." I watched through the glass as Dr. Carter, Leonard, stopped at the nurse's station to talk to Monique. His hand rested on her lower back. Possessive, casual. He called her Mani in front of 2 other nurses, asked her about something on a chart with the kind of attention that felt like scrutiny. When Monique looked up and caught my eye, her expression was apologetic. Weary. I looked away first. That evening, I needed to stretch my legs. My father was dozing, stable, and I took my coffee cup down the long hallway toward the visitors' lounge. I passed an office with the door cracked open. Voices drifted out, tense, low. I didn't mean to stop, but I recognized Leonard's voice, and something in his tone made me pause. "Can't afford another complaint, Monique. We talked about this." "I'm just doing my job." Her voice was defensive, but not angry, careful. "Rick's son is a concerned kid, that's all. He's not a kid, and you're getting that look again." A pause. "I stuck my neck out for you once already. I won't do it again." I moved away before I could hear more. My heart pounded. "Another complaint." "What complaint? About what?" When I got back to the room, Monique came in to check vitals. She smiled at my father, joked with him about how grumpy he was being about the food. She didn't look at me once. That night, lying in the chair with machines beeping and my father's breathing steady and deep, I couldn't stop replaying Leonard's words. What had happened before? What had I walked into? Assessed word count and plotted narrative progression through Chapter 12. I'm at about 1,650 words. I need to continue through Chapter 12, which is about halfway through the story. Let me keep going with the same tone and pacing. The next morning, my father was more alert. Complaining about the eggs, which felt like a good sign. I was helping him sit up when my phone rang. My mother. "How's the fancy hospital treating him?" Her voice dripped with something between concern and bitterness. "He's doing better. Dr. Carter says..." "Who's his primary nurse?" The question came out of nowhere. Sharp. Specific. "There's a few, they rotate." "Daniel." She waited. "Is it that woman? The one from when you were 17? My throat went dry. "How did you..." "I saw the name of the hospital, and I know Leonard Carter. I looked him up years ago." She sighed. "Is she there? Mom, is she getting too close again?" The way she said it, getting too close again, made something click into place. A memory I'd buried. My mother, standing in the doorway of my room, arms crossed. Monique gathering her things, voices raised in the kitchen. "She was just doing her job," I said quietly. "She was staying 3 hours past her shift, sitting with you at 2 a.m. You were 17, Daniel. You were vulnerable, and she was..." She stopped. "I did what I had to do. To protect you." "Protect me from what?" But she'd already moved on, asking about discharge dates and whether I'd be staying with my father afterward. I let her talk. When the call ended, I sat there staring at my phone, remembering. My mother had threatened her. Threatened to report her for crossing boundaries. Monique had left to protect herself. To protect me, maybe. To avoid a formal complaint that would follow her forever. I found Monique that afternoon in a small consultation room. The door stayed cracked. She made sure of that. "My mom called," I said. "She told me about what she said. Back then." Monique's shoulders dropped. She looked tired. "I wondered if you remembered." I didn't. Not until now. I sat down across from her. "Tell me what really happened." She was quiet for a long time. Then, "Your mother thought I was encouraging emotional dependency, that you relied on me too much. She said if I didn't leave, she'd file a formal complaint, something that would go on my record permanently. There was nothing. I know, but it doesn't matter what actually happened. It matters what it looked like." She twisted her wedding ring. "You were 17. I was your caregiver. Any complaint like that, it would have destroyed me. I walked away to protect us both. You didn't even say goodbye." "I couldn't." Her voice cracked just slightly. "If I'd come back one more time, I wouldn't have been able to leave." We sat there in that small room with the door cracked open, fluorescent lights humming overhead, and I realized we'd both carried this for 15 years. This almost relationship that was never supposed to exist. Jasmine appeared in the hallway, glancing through the open door. "Everything okay?" "Fine," Monique said smoothly. "Just going over some discharge planning." After Jasmine left, Monique stood. "Be careful, Daniel. Walls have ears here." The next few days, something shifted. I started timing my coffee runs to match when Monique was on the floor. I'd check the whiteboard in the morning, feel my chest loosen when I saw her name assigned to my father's care. My father started physical therapy. Short walks down the hallway with Monique and a therapist on either side. I walked behind them, watching the way she encouraged him with the same gentle firmness she'd once used on me. "Come on, Rick. Just to the window. You can do it." "I'm tired." "I know, but your son is watching and you're not going to let him see you quit." My father glanced back at me and grinned. "She's tougher than she looks." "I remember," I said. Monique's eyes met mine for just a second. A whole conversation in that glance. That evening, she was about to leave for the night when I stopped her at the door. "Is there a direct number, in case something happens and I need to reach someone who knows him?" She hesitated. Then she pulled out a sticky note from her pocket, wrote something down, and handed it to me. "For work-related questions." But she didn't quite meet my eyes when she said it. After she left, I stared at the number. Debated. Then sent a simple text. "Thank you for today. For my dad, I mean. Daniel." I didn't expect a response. It was almost midnight when my phone buzzed. "I was scared to see you again. Didn't know how much you'd remember." Just that. Nothing else. "But it opened something," I texted back. She replied. "We kept it careful, talking about his rehab progress, her long shifts, the way 15 years had somehow collapsed into nothing the moment we saw each other again." Around 1 a.m., she wrote, "I thought about you sometimes. Wondered if you were okay." I typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on. "I looked for you after you left. I didn't know how to find you. I'm sorry. Don't be. I understand now." Jasmine came in to check my father's vitals around 1:30, saw me still awake, and joked about Monique's shift running late. She's a workaholic, always has been. After Jasmine left, I put my phone down and stared at the ceiling, heart racing. Because I had her number now. A direct line to the one person I shouldn't be texting. But I was already thinking about what to say tomorrow. The next afternoon, Monique asked me to step away for a minute while my father napped. She led me to the staff break room, timed perfectly when most nurses were at the station. She unlocked her locker and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Worn, creased. When she unfolded it, I stopped breathing. It was a sketch I'd made when I was 17. Her hands, holding a cup of tea. I'd drawn it during one of those endless afternoons when the pain was too much to sleep, but too sharp to think about anything else. She'd sat with me, and I'd drawn her hands because they were the only thing keeping me tethered. "You kept it?" My voice came out rough. "I kept it." "Why?" She looked at the paper, not at me. "Because even when life feels heavy, you're capable of creating something gentle. I needed that reminder sometimes." Our fingers brushed when I reached for the sketch. Just a second of contact. But it felt like touching a live wire. The break room door swung open, Jasmine looking for her lunch bag. We stepped apart, fast, smooth, like we'd practiced. I walked back to my father's room with the sketch in my pocket and my hands shaking. That night, after my father fell asleep, I took a photo of the sketch lying on my lap, cropped carefully to hide the hospital bed, and sent it to Monique. "Thank you for keeping this, for keeping me." Her response came an hour later, starting a conversation that lasted until nearly 3 a.m. She told me about going back to school, meeting Leonard at a conference, slowly moving into his world of charity galas and penthouses. I told her about my parents' divorce, how the accident had broken something in our family that never healed, how my mother's bitterness shaped every relationship I had after. We didn't flirt. We didn't cross any obvious lines. But the intimacy was there, raw and aching and familiar. At 2:47 a.m., she wrote, "I'm sorry I left the way I did. I thought it was the only way to protect us both." I stared at the words, typed and deleted responses. Finally sent, "I never wanted you to disappear, but I'm glad you're okay." Then I put the phone down and fell asleep in the chair, sketch still in my pocket. The next day felt lighter. My father managed to walk farther than he had since surgery, just a few extra steps, but enough to make him emotional. He squeezed Monique's hand and called her an angel. She laughed and told him to save his energy for tomorrow's session. Later, passing a supply closet, I saw her restocking linens. I stepped inside to thank her for pushing him so hard. The space was small, cramped, private. "He's doing really well," I said. "Because of you." "He's doing well because he wants to." Her voice was soft. "But I'm glad I could help." Something in my chest cracked. "These last few days have been—" "I know." And she did know. I could see it in her face. When my voice wavered, she reached for me without thinking. Her forehead pressed against mine for just a few seconds. Both of us breathing in sync. Not a kiss. Not anything that crossed a line. Just connection. Raw and real and terrifying. We pulled apart when the door creaked from hallway air pressure. "We can't," she whispered. "I know." But neither of us moved. Finally, she stepped out first. I waited 30 seconds, then followed. Different directions. Professional distance. That night, shivering in the chair, Monique draped her cardigan over me before rushing off to a consult. "Just give it back before you leave," she said, not looking back. I fell asleep wrapped in fabric that smelled like jasmine and clean cotton. Jasmine passed by later, saw me sleeping, and smiled. She pulled out her phone and snapped a photo through the doorway. Me curled in the chair, Monique's cardigan around my shoulders, my father sleeping peacefully in the background. She posted it in the staff group chat. Our favorite dedicated son, still holding the fort with Monique's lucky sweater, harmless, sweet, innocent. But somewhere else in the hospital, Leonard's phone buzzed with a new message he hadn't read yet. And everything was about to change. The next morning felt wrong. I woke up to a different nurse doing rounds. Older woman, efficient, polite. When I asked where Monique was, she just said, "Scheduling change," without looking at me. My father didn't notice. He was focused on breakfast, complaining about the portion sizes. But I noticed. I checked the whiteboard. Monique's name was gone. Leonard came in for his daily check-in. His manner was different, colder. He went through the medical updates in a clipped tone, avoided small talk, and left with a comment about maintaining appropriate boundaries for everyone's safety. I texted Monique around noon. "Everything okay?" The response came 3 hours later. "I've been reassigned to another unit. Just a staffing thing. Please focus on your dad." I sent 3 more messages that evening. Careful ones, worried, not accusatory. Her replies got shorter, then stopped. By midnight, I was staring at red receipts and feeling my chest cave in. The next 2 days blurred together. The new nurse was competent but distant. No warmth, no gentle jokes with my father, just by-the-book care. I walked the hallways during every spare moment, lingering near elevators, checking other units. I'd catch glimpses of Monique, disappearing into a staff-only area, her voice behind a closing door. Once, I saw her at the far end of a corridor with a group of nurses. She turned away before our eyes could meet. My father's condition kept improving. The doctors started talking discharge. It should have been good news. Instead, I felt panic. Once he was home, I'd have no legitimate reason to be here. "You look terrible," Jasmine said one evening, taking my father's blood pressure. "Your dad's getting better. You should be relieved." "I am." She didn't look convinced. That night, I went out to the parking lot for air. Leaned against my car under the streetlights, staring up at the hospital windows, wondering which one was hers, wondering if she was thinking about me too, or if she'd already decided this was a mistake she needed to erase. Discharge day arrived on a Thursday. I helped with paperwork while Leonard gave detailed instructions about medication and follow-up appointments. Monique wasn't there. Leonard's manner was polished, professional, distant. He thanked me for my cooperation and made a pointed comment about trusting the team and respecting boundaries. My father was excited, nervous. He asked if I'd stay with him for a while, help him settle. I said yes. Before we left, I walked one last slow lap through the hallway with him, looking for her. We didn't see her. In the elevator down, I clutched the sketch in my jacket pocket. It felt like walking away from something unfinished. At my father's house that night, I helped him into bed, organized his medications, checked that he had everything he needed. Then I stepped onto his porch and stared at my silent phone. No new messages. I didn't know how to let go, didn't know if I was supposed to. I spent the next morning at my father's place, helping him adjust, arranging pills in weekly containers, cooking simple meals, watching game shows with him while he dozed in his recliner. In the afternoon, I drove to my own apartment to grab clothes. Tyler spotted me in the hallway and pulled me into his place for a beer. "You look like hell, man." "Thanks." "What's going on? Your dad's home." "That's good, right?" I told him. Not everything, but enough. The nurse from when I was 17. The hospital. Her husband. The way she'd disappeared again. Tyler listened without interrupting. Then he leaned back, bottle in hand, and said, "Some stories are meant to stay unfinished." "What?" "You go back to that hospital just to see her. You blow up her whole life, her career, her marriage. Maybe your dad's care if Carter decides to be vindictive." He shook his head. "Sometimes the right thing is walking away." "I don't want to ruin her life." "Then don't. Let it be what it was, a moment, a memory, something that mattered once." I left his apartment feeling worse, not better. When I got to my car in the parking lot, I noticed something tucked into the driver's side door handle, a folded piece of paper. I knew what it was before I opened it. The sketch. My drawing of her hands. The paper was worn now from years of being kept. And in the corner, in Monique's neat handwriting, was a date. 2 weeks from now, just that. No explanation, no location, just a date. I sat in the driver's seat, staring at it, knowing this wasn't an accident. The next 14 days crawled by. I split time between my father's house and my apartment. Tried to focus on freelance work, but I'd stare at my screen for hours without getting anything done. I helped my father walk to the mailbox, responded to frustrated client emails, texted Tyler about sports instead of feelings. I didn't text Monique, not once. I replayed every interaction, the supply closet, the sketch, her forehead against mine, trying to figure out if the date was a goodbye, a warning, or a door cracked open. I remembered something from when I was 17. When I was bedbound and Monique would take breaks on the front porch, we had a code. She'd flick the porch light on and off, 3 beats, to signal she was outside if I wanted to talk from my window. A simple pattern. Our pattern. The night of the date arrived. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I drove to the hospital area. Not to the hospital itself, but to the row of high-rise condos across from the parking lot. I'd looked up Leonard's address weeks ago. Public information from some medical directory. I parked, got out, sat on a bench across from their building. It was a nice building. Glass and steel, the kind of place with doormen and marble lobbies, the kind of place I'd never belong. I sat there as the sun went down, watching windows light up, watching people come and go. Not sure what I was doing or what I expected. Then, around 9 p.m., a balcony light on an upper floor flickered on. Off. On again. 3 beats. Our old code. My heart stopped. I stared at that balcony, knowing she was there, knowing she'd seen me, or at least hoped I'd come. I could walk inside, find the apartment, ring the bell. But I didn't move, because Tyler was right. Going to that door would blow up her life, her career, her marriage, everything she'd built. I pulled out my phone and opened a voice memo app, started talking quietly, like a confession. I saw you again, and it felt like I could finally breathe. I don't know if you can see me from up there, but I'm here. I came. I can't be the reason your life falls apart. I can't be that person. I talked for maybe 5 minutes, about seeing her in the hospital, the sketch, the supply closet, how I was terrified of being the reason she lost everything. The porch light stayed on the whole time. Then it clicked off, and stayed off. I sat there for another 10 minutes. Then I stood, legs stiff, and walked back to my car. I never sent her the voice memo. I kept it as a boundary I could control. Driving back to my father's house, I watched the hospital lights recede in my rearview mirror. But my mind stayed circling her. A few days later, I took my father to his first outpatient rehab appointment. Group session in the hospital's rehab wing. Patients working on mobility, fine motor skills, all the small things that rebuild a life. We saw a flyer on the bulletin board. Volunteer-led art activity next week. Help patients with stress relief and coordination. My father grinned at me. You should help out. You're the artist. I don't think, come on, do something useful with that art degree I helped pay for. I signed up. Partly for him, partly because it gave me a legitimate reason to be inside the hospital again. The day of the art session, I arrived early, portfolio under my arm, checked in at the front desk. They directed me to a bright room filled with tables, paints, brushes, nervous patients. I set out supplies, organized brushes by size. Tried not to think about whether she'd be there. Then the door opened. Monique walked in wearing her badge and a neutral expression. The rehab coordinator introduced her as the supervising nurse for the session. Our eyes met. The room dropped away, just for a second. Then we both looked away, back to our tasks. Professional. Careful. The coordinator clapped to start the session. All right, everyone, let's create something beautiful today. I helped my father and 3 other patients paint simple shapes: trees, flowers, abstract swirls, the smell of acrylic paint mixed with disinfectant. Soft music played from a speaker in the corner. Monique moved around the room checking blood pressure, encouraging participation. When she reached our table, she thanked me for volunteering in a steady tone. "Your father speaks very highly of you," she said, adjusting his chair. "He's biased." My father laughed. "The boy's got talent, just doesn't like showing off." We fell into a rhythm. Monique would pause at our table, offer suggestions, move on. Professional interactions, nothing that would raise eyebrows. But there were moments, small ones. Her hand steadying a patient's shaking grip landed close to mine. Our voices overlapped when we both tried to help someone at the same time. During a lull, when most patients were focused on their work, she stepped close to refill a water cup. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for that night, for not coming upstairs. I saw the light." "I know. Leonard was at a conference. I had the apartment to myself and I just—" She paused. "I wanted you to know I remembered, that it wasn't nothing. It was never nothing." She nodded, looked down. "He saw the photo of you sleeping with my cardigan. He put it together. That's why I was reassigned." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. I knew the risk." She glanced around, making sure no one was listening. "We can't go back to the late-night texts or the empty rooms, but I don't want to pretend we're strangers either." "What do? We stay in public spaces, group sessions, hallways, places where there's nothing to hide." She met my eyes. "No more private messages, no more closed doors, but also, no more pretending this doesn't exist." It wasn't what I wanted, but it was something. "Okay," I said. "Okay." The session ended. I walked my father out to the car, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. When I glanced back, Monique stood in the doorway, watching us go. We didn't wave. Didn't need to. Over the next few weeks, a new rhythm emerged. I brought my father to rehab twice a week, volunteered for more art sessions. Sometimes I'd see Monique in other parts of the hospital, a nod across a crowded hallway, a brief exchange at the nurses' station. We kept everything in public, everything careful. But there were small gestures. A coffee left at the nurses' station with a sticky note that just said, "Thanks." A book placed in the donation bin that I knew she'd recognize. Little reminders that we saw each other. My father got stronger, started walking without a cane. His color came back. He talked about going back to his woodworking shop in the garage. "That nurse really pulled me through," he said one evening over dinner. "Monique, she's special." "Yeah, she is." "You two seem to get along." I looked up. "What do you mean?" "Nothing. Just, she's patient with you. Not all nurses bother with the families like that." He shrugged. "You're lucky she was there." I didn't know how to explain that luck had nothing to do with it, that some people come into your life at the exact moment you need them, and then come back years later to remind you that some connections don't fade. They just wait. One late afternoon, after a particularly good rehab session, where my father walked unassisted for the first time, I stepped outside to the hospital courtyard alone. I needed air, needed to process watching him succeed. needed to feel something other than the constant low-grade ache of wanting what I couldn't have. I looked up at the hospital windows, 3rd floor, and there she was. Monique stood at a window, one hand resting against the glass. She wasn't waving, wasn't signaling, just there. I lifted my hand. A small gesture, barely noticeable to anyone else. She pressed her palm flat against the glass. We stood like that for maybe 30 seconds. 2 people separated by glass and distance, and every possible complication, connected by something that had survived 15 years and 2 disappearances. Then she stepped back from the window, and I turned to walk to my car. That night, lying in bed at my apartment, I thought about all the ways this could have gone differently. I could have walked into that building, knocked on her door, asked her to choose. But that's the thing about caring for someone, really caring. You don't ask them to burn their life down just because you want them closer. Some people you only meet once, and you spend years trying to forget them, trying to move on, building a life that doesn't have a her-shaped hole in it. And then they walk back into your life when you least expect it. Not to stay, not to fix anything, just to teach you something about memory and distance and the way love doesn't always look like what you thought it would. I learned that sometimes the most honest way to stay in someone's life is from the margins, from public spaces and careful words and gestures that mean everything and nothing at once. I learned that remembering from a distance isn't giving up. It's just a different kind of bravery. My father got better. Monique kept working. Leonard never knew the full story. And I kept living my life. Freelance design, Tyler's terrible jokes, occasional nights at my father's place. But some mornings, when I drop him off at rehab, I see her in the hallway. We exchange a few words about his progress, laugh about something small, let our hands brush when passing a clipboard. And that's enough. Some doors never fully close. They just stay cracked, letting in enough light to remember. Not enough to burn. I'm okay with that now. I have to be. Because some people you only meet once, and you spend years trying to forget them. And then they walk back into your life and teach you that remembering, from a distance, is sometimes the only honest way to stay.